crap working. Now we're firing up on YouTube. We're still trying to work out a few of the technical difficulties, but we'll have a good show today. We'll cover some of the stuff going on, of course, the George Floyd case of that, and some of the stuff going on around that. Trump issued his executive order on Twitter. And we'll have Susan Shelley on at the bottom of the hour from a Southern California news group to give her insights into everything that's going on that. So we should be hitting Facebook in a second. Of that, you might have to grab your other keyboard of that, or maybe not. There's that funky slide guitar music that comes on every day live at 5 on IE Newswire on Facebook, and we've fired up a little bit on YouTube as we start another broadcasting day. On a thankful Thursday doing that. Well, maybe even a little bit thirsty Thursday, as maybe you can possibly at some point in some time go out and actually go get a drink at a restaurant or your favorite a taco place or something as things are moving up. Heard Las Vegas is going to be opening up the casinos here pretty soon, probably starting the first in the first week of June in there some point. And well, all the employees are going to be wearing masks. Some of the other, it's not going to be a requirement, I don't think, to be wearing masks in the casino as a participant in throwing your money down the rat hole like most of you do at the casinos. That's one reason why Roy does not go there, because eventually you keep playing the machines or playing blackjack or something, pretty soon they are going to have all your money. No, they don't. I've always said that they do not turn on, all those lights and all those big 40, 50-story hotels didn't get built because everybody was winning out of there. They built by everybody losing their money over there. But hey, if that's your form of entertainment of doing that, go for it. But that's another one that's opening up across the board on that. So we want to get into that. Want to get into the George Floyd case of that, where the cop had his foot on the guy's throat there for several minutes on top of that. And we're running across that whole deal, and it's terrible of what's going on, and it doesn't, and there's no sort of explanation yet or justification, let's say that, of what's going on. I think we should all, it probably should get the benefit of the doubt and not the benefit of the doubt, but we don't want to rush our justice system. There's, they've already been fired, which is not the standard protocol when there's a death or police shooting or something like that. They usually put them on, paid or unpaid administrative leave. But, the prosecutor, supposedly all these riots and stuff that started that they're going to do across the board, or they're coming out with on the scene of, the justification was, well, they haven't prosecuted them. They haven't hung the 4 officers, in the middle of the town square, immediately on that, which goes to show. And again, there seems to be no logical justification for what they did. Now, we don't know what happened beforehand and all that, because the prosecutor, as I heard, said, well, there's no reason to charge them now, or something to that effect, or that. Maybe he doesn't have all the evidence, and maybe he's looking at all the evidence of what's going on in that. But when you get to the one point of that, and tell me when I can roll video 1 when you're done with that. But when you get to the point of, if you're going to start looting the stores in Minneapolis or doing the brain surgeons that were down in L.A., that were assaulting the cop cars and all that other stuff of that, you're not, what's the justification? Now, what do you think you're doing, or what is, it pales into comparison to me of what the deal is. This is video one of them looting in the store in Minneapolis of the Target. Now, you tell me what justification, because, it's unfortunate George Floyd lost his life, but what reasoning do you have? Does that justify you stealing stuff out of a store? This is absolutely, I would, I would like to, maybe even indemnify some of these people and ask them, why did you, what was your mentality of you're raiding the store, the Target store here in Minneapolis, of going on that? Now, what does that have to do with George Floyd getting killed, as you see the guy rolling out with it by the stuff? The guy that cracks me up is the guy with the vacuum cleaner of that. But, what's the justification of doing this? What in God's green earth do you come up with that makes this up? Because you're what is that going to? Is that going to bring George Floyd back? You're using this for justification of doing this? I don't know. It's absolutely incredulous sometimes of what goes on and all this, the numbers on this stuff. But the next one example is, and then this is really even more dumbfounding on that. These are the guys that were the brain surgeons that were down in L.A. that were blocking the roads and the freeways and that, and decided they were going to trash a cop car in the middle of the road. So they just said that one cop pulls up, and you're going to see the video here in a second of that. He pulls up to this angry mob that's stopping the freeway. Again, what do you think you're accomplishing by stopping the freeway or doing this on this protest? So here is video one. Roll that one of going through the deal. Punch it up, and we'll roll video one. This is the thugs that are blocking the streets and assaulting the CHP officers in their cars. So here they are coming up on the deal. Here's the first CHP officer. So they're kind of surrounding him. Now they start jumping on his car. So they're going on. This one guy, see the one guy that just jumps off? Now he decides he's going to roll off on that. Now he's laying on the ground, obviously unconscious at best. The other cop car pulls up, is maybe coming to his assistance. Now they're beating on the cop car, kicking on that. Blow the back window out. This guy just says, hell with this. I'm out of here on that. Now this is the part that does that. And now they're looking at the poor guy. Now what? They didn't want him to get help. The cops could have the guys out there right away, which I'm sure they probably did. But what I want to know is that in the earlier protests where LAPD were out there on that and the highway patrol, why aren't they arresting these people that are blocking the road? You are trespassing. On top of that, you're a danger to society. They should be locking those guys up, getting rid of them, telling them, hey, this is it. We're over. You are breaking the law. You're not blocking the freeways. You're not blocking the traffic. You're not doing anything else. And now, if they're going to send the SWAT team out, well, let's send the SWAT team out for that. Let's start rounding these guys up, tear gas or whatever. Because no matter what happens or what anything happens in these situations, there's no justification for blocking the roads or looting stores or anything else. That to me is, where's the mentality in that? You're not concerned in my world. You're not concerned about George Floyd or anybody else. You're seizing this opportunity either to bag some goods or get my name out there maybe on the papers or stuff or assault. What is assaulting the CHP going to do to bring back George Floyd? I don't know. That's another one. But we're going to cover another story here on that. We'll pick this back up on the flip side. But I wanted to get to this one because Stephanie's going to join me in a minute. We taped this one from last night. But one of the good school administrators that showed you how you could get it done, and a very beloved principal at Norte Vista High School down in Riverside, Susan Boyd, unexpectedly passed away. But she had a lot of accomplishments. She took a Norte Vista High, which was in the bottom 5%, and in 5 or 6 years turned it into one of the top 1% schools in California. It's an example of that, of how you get it done. So they have some quotes in there, and we go over some of the things that were going on. So here's the tape we have. Remembering Susan Boyd, principal of Notre Dame High School, who passed away at 60 unexpectedly. We're back on the air on that. There's one thing that I want to talk about, and I've mentioned it a lot of times. And some people put a lot of barriers on that, or say a lot of people want to tell you what you can't do. They don't tell you what you can do, or they make a lot of excuses about what happens. But and it's kind of a little sad note that was going on, but there's a really good story behind this deal. So put up picture one on that article of that on the screen as we're going. The principal who led Norte Vista High from the bottom 5% to the top award passes away. This was and it's written by Ryan Hagan of the Press Enterprise. Susan Boyd, credited with turning Riverside's Norte Vista High School from a failing school to California's Golden Ribbon School, died Wednesday, May 20th. Boyd, 60, died of undisclosed sudden illness. She took over Norte Vista in 2009 after serving as principal of Loma Vista Middle School, earning a reputation for always being among the students, demanding and receiving excellence, and giving warm personal attention. So I want to stop right there, because there's the key word, I think, in that is demanding. Not asking pretty please of that or something, or not being afraid to upset the little dears at school and stuff. But she demanded that they
treated her with respect.
Yeah, they treated her with respect. They did their schoolwork, and yeah, there's a time for play and all that stuff, but there is a time you have to learn that lesson and somebody has to put their foot down and say, this is the way it's going to be in order for you to get to where you want to be. So bring back up the rest of the article on that.
I like that. I think a lot of kids need that guidance and that teaching.
Based on test results, the Alvord School District campus in Riverside was at the time in the bottom 5% of schools statewide, and it had a history of other problems, said Mia Villa Alvarado, the parent of 3 graduates. So, and it's quoting her, that school was an absolute mess. Kids were smoking pot in the halls. Villetta Alvarado said, they looked down one day because of a riot of my son's freshman year. Boyd immediately projected confidence, telling parents it was the best high school on earth, and a message repeated in every email. Soon we believed in her, and it literally did become the best school on earth, Villetta Alvarado said. While there's no official ranking of the best schools on earth, the campus lowered suspension and expulsion rates while raising graduation rates, attendance rates, and state test scores. Enrollment was in the International and a Baruquet program, and I know I butchered that, more than doubled over 5 years. In 2015, California Department of Education awarded the schools the Gold Ribbon which recognizes schools that have shown improvement in teaching, academics, and state performance standards. So, bring us back up. So, what I want to do, and I've done that. People have, at other places have talked about, well, yeah, we're raising our graduation rates for that and that, and then I ask the question, well, why aren't the test scores going up? And you get a lot of excuses and blather and this. And they request you to come to meetings and think they're going to explain stuff to you, and then you have to explain it to them. This is a number one example of what I'm talking about. Yeah, she went in there and done a lot of these things, but she went in there and she demanded that they straighten their act up. She demanded that they learn. She went in there with a stern face on sometimes and said, you know, and didn't sugarcoat it.
Right.
Or wish things away of that. And went out there and earned the respect. And there's one thing I've said a lot, and that's why it struck me in the Ryan Hagan piece. Because I talk about it a lot. If I can give anybody one thing, I want to give them confidence. Because if you're confident, you're more likely to succeed. You're more likely, if you're in a stressful situation, you're more likely to get your way out of it. Or if you run into an emergency situation or things are happening, if you have confidence in yourself, you will more likely do that. And sometimes that comes to the point, or of the things, or that it's like the whole bullying thing or stuff. You know, it would be nice if we could wish that all away or wish it away, but it's going to happen. It's going to happen to practically every one of us at some point. And we need to have those tools and training in place to deal with not only that or any other situation. And I think that's what Principal Boyd of Norta Vista, who turned that school around, she understood that. So there's a prime number one example of when people ask, or where does this, or when are you talking about this stuff, or why do you say this stuff, there it is. It is possible. It isn't really a lot of rocket science work to figure out. You don't have to have a PhD. You don't ever have to taught a class like I did when I was in the 5th grade. Go ask Chuck Orr, my teacher.
Shut up.
There's a, you don't have to, it doesn't take, a lifelong work of doing a particular thing to know what works for a group, a vast majority of people, to make them motivated, to get them to succeed, to get them to accomplish a goal. And when you take those pieces out, and we talked about it a little bit yesterday, trying to turn our boys into girls and things like that in this society of that. This is what I'm talking about. You're going to rue the day when you attempt to do that, because you're going to see all the socioeconomic problems of this and the suicide rate. And we talked about it a little bit, the suicide rate going up on that over COVID. But the suicide rate has tripled amongst teen girls and doubled amongst boys, in the last 5 or 10 years of this stuff. And these are the things I talk about. And a few of us have of doing that. And I would hope in the future that more of our leaders in administration, in teachers, in school boards would not want to meet this with resistance, but would want to meet this type of education system to give, if you're really concerned or you really want to give our kids the best education and the best hope and the best opportunity, I would hope that you would come and ask and work as, and I hate this word because Gavin Newsom uses it all the time, it's driving me, collaboratively. Look at some of the people that do want to work collaboratively or do that, and the ones that don't. It's the ones that don't want to work collaboratively, the ones that want to do it my way or the highway and get really upset if it doesn't happen. Those are the ones that I'm going to submit to you are the ones that really are the roadblocks in the quest for a society that we all want to live in. So that's kind of my little rendition of that. But the article and the sad passing of Susan Boyd at 60, of that, it would have been nice, or if she would have been added a little bit longer on that. But hopefully, and I think this will be, and I think it will be the legacy of Susan Boyd, of that. She will have inspired a lot of youth coming up in whatever profession, whatever they do in their lives. She will have given them the tools to succeed, and there's probably no greater gift than she could have given all the students that have passed through her leadership.
I want to highlight, too, in that article, it says in 2015, the California Department of Education awarded the school the gold ribbon, in which recognizes a school that has been shown improvement in teaching academics and state performance standards. That right there is a great accomplishment. That's awesome.
So that, and as I've explained to one school district, the last time they wanted to try to indoctrinate me, there you go. You can go from the bottom to the top in 6 years. I think I laid you out a little plan or how you do that. Maybe it's time you implement it.
Shut up. We're on a good roll. And then you got to throw that in there.
Why?
Stop.
Is that not the truth? It can be done. Let's do it.
Yeah. But our hearts go out to the Boyd family and everybody that she's touched, her students and all of that. I mean, that's a sad thing, but at least she left behind some great knowledge and motivation for others that hopefully people will use.
It is. It's a sad occasion, but in the positive part of that is she left a great legacy for all the students that were.
Go back up to her picture.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah, flash the picture. There's Susan Boyd, principal of that, who passed away at 60 of a sudden illness, and that one of the great leaders in our school system, showed you how it's done. Now, the best respects I think you can pay to Susan Boyd is to take her legacy and the things she did and progress them to the next level.
And I like how she demanded students to give her respect. That I dig that. I think more parents and people need to be like that. Like, I demand that you give me a raise. And Jesse. Is that how that works? You're welcome. See, I got your back, too.
On that note, we'll do that. Rest in peace, Susan Boyd.
Yeah.
There you go. A tribute to Susan Boyd, one of the great educators, school administrators that showed you how to get it done. Passed away way too quickly at the age of 60. But again, like I said, she leaves a legacy that will serve her well, I think, in the annals of history and education, and I hope not only around this area, but maybe across the nation, a lot of principals, teachers, and school administrators can learn from Susan Boyd on the things she did, not only to turn her school around, but to get the respect of her students. And again, rest in peace, Susan Boyd, because we have a lot of challenges coming up in our schools, coming up in the whole deal coming up here on that. And, they kind of floated out the guidelines on this stuff a little bit again, more of that. The Tony Thurman, the superintendent of public schools for the state of California, in the LA school district, kind of mirrored the same thing of what we have coming up. The half a school days, only 16 kids. You can't play football. Now, to answer me this question, sports. Let's take football. How do you play football while practicing social distancing, or any other sport? Practically, well. Baseball, somewhat, you're least spread out, but I mean, if you're on base, sometimes, especially on first base, you're close to the first baseman, but batter and the catcher are fairly close. But football, basketball, of that, kids can't play. They're going to have to eat at their, no cafeteria. They're going to have to eat at their desks, yada, 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 yada. Why are they even bothering? Why don't we just cancel school and education as we know it if we're going to go to these extents, because that was always the big deal about school or against charter schools or homeschooling. Well, the kids don't get to socialize and they might stunt their development. Well, if they go to school and you're stunning their social development, or you're not letting them sit next to each other, you're not letting them play at recess, or you can't sit next to your best friend or whatever at the lunch table, what's the use in all that? I mean, and you're going to do social distancing and mask wearing and all this other neat stuff that they're planning on. Why not just get rid of the whole K through 12 education system there, and or go all online like they're talking about on that? Because there is not going to be, how are you? In order, if you cut all the class sizes in half, you're going to have to go to half a days or only 2.5 days a week or whatever, because there's no way you're going to fit all the kids in. I mean, it's a pretty easy deal to figure out on this stuff, and why they and even if you're not getting some of the inside information on that, just putting a little logic to this stuff gets you to where it doesn't take a brain surgeon to figure all this stuff out. So as we've said from the beginning of this, schools are going to change radically.
30 seconds.
From what you know them to that going forward. And the big reason they're going to try to do that, the big reason is they know they're in trouble in pensions. Cost of $20,000 per student for K through 12 was unsustainable, so they're going to use this as the excuse to get rid of that.
All right, here we go.
Smartphone apps. Go to KMET1490am.com and download your free phone app today.
IE Newswire Daily is on the air.
The following is a paid program. Views and claims expressed are those of the program producer and are not endorsed by this station. Opinions expressed are not necessarily those of radio station KMET, its management, employees, or guests.
There's that funky slide guitar music. It comes on every 5:30 Monday through Friday on the Mighty Met 1490 KMET. Broadcasting all over the Southern California airways. We've been on since, which we usually do on YouTube and Facebook Live, on IE Newswire, on that. We covered the George Floyd situation, and mainly the looters that were in Minneapolis and all that, and the brain surgeons that were blocking the freeways on that, and the one cat who was on the hood raising his hand looking real cool until he jumped off and looks like he dinged his head. I don't know what happened to him, but at best he was unconscious. And then they start busting the cop cars and stuff. What kind of justification is that? George Floyd, you're not bringing back. George Floyd, no matter what, if the cops were wrong, and it very well appears that was the case, does not justify looting. That does not justify blocking the LA freeways. That does not justify assaulting CHP officers and the whole gamut that goes on in this, which is absolutely, which boggles my mind. I would like to hear the interviews. It would be great to get the interviews of the ones that are doing this right as they're doing this, and find out what's rolling around in their head about this stuff, or why they justify what appears to be a very gruesome action by some police officers, and a man unfortunately lost his life. Why does that justify you to go out and loot and steal from another business, or assault police officers, or make the people's lives of LA a hellhole, which, notwithstanding all the coronavirus and all the stuff that in that, but just blocking the traffic and just making a nuisance of yourself. But we'll get the thoughts from our next guest coming up on this and many other topics. She's been on for many years on the show. Susan SHELLEY, she's the editorial writer for the Press Enterprise, San Bernardino Sun, Inland Daily Bulletin, Redlands Daily Facts, and a gazillion more newspapers all across Southern California, but more importantly, in my mind, Vice President of the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association, the aforementioned Susan SHELLEY. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Roy. Great to be with you.
Before we get into your columns, a couple things I wanted to cover. One will segue into them, but I don't know if you heard that little bit about the George Floyd situation and that, which appears to be very, very, very unfortunate. That, but what gets me is what's the justification or what's the mentality that says, okay, this guy, maybe had a severe wrong to him. What's the justification of looting businesses, blocking freeways in LA, assaulting police officers and cops and cars and everything else?
Well, it's not justified. Rioting and looting is a distraction from the crime that we just witnessed on video of a man being murdered by a police officer. And anything that takes away the focus from that is unfortunate and not helpful, because that was so unspeakable that it cannot be overstated how seriously Americans should take that. That what happened to that man should never happen anywhere, particularly in the United States of America. And I understand the rage. I understand the anger. I mean, I shouldn't say I understand it because I can't begin to understand it. But it would be unfortunate if the anger that people feel at the rioting and the looting takes away the focus from what was indefensible police conduct.
Yes. Again, you're not bringing back George Floyd, and again, I think you made the point exactly. You're doing more harm to that situation by doing what you're doing than, okay, I could understand, voicing your opinion, saying you want justice served in this, we should not let this happen again, and that's very understandable, and there's a complete justification for that. But not, not engaging in criminal activity yourself is not, in this case, going to do anything but make the problem worse.
It certainly doesn't help. It doesn't help that things are set on fire and stores are looted. That's not a protest. That's just rage, and it's a distraction. It doesn't focus the attention where the attention needs to be, and it endangers the lives of other people, which is not necessary or helpful, and it's really a sad reaction.
It is, and it is, and I'm going to mention a little bit because we're going to kind of segue into your column on the schools and charter schools and what's going on. But at first, and I talked about it a little bit at the leading into the show. They came out, Tony Thurman and LAUSD kind of backed it up about how what the new school year is going to look like. Probably half-size classrooms, and social distancing, mask wearing in the whole, and you can't play. You're not going to be able to go out and play recess with your friends or eat in the cafeteria. You're going to have to eat in your desk. Blah 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 blah. First thing is, well, this is going to be the justification. How are they going to cut the class sizes in half unless they do go to half-day sessions or 2.5 days a week or however? The math just doesn't work out. But the second point is on this is this shows the and this shows the utter insanity of this whole deal, because there was a study out that at the minimum 42% of all coronavirus cases were in nursing homes all across the USA. They are 0.6% of the population. We shut everything down, and if New York was reporting the numbers right, it's probably 53%. It could be anywhere from 42 to 53, but we'd even take the low number. We shut down our economy, and we banned the kids, which like in LA County, not one death of somebody under 18 at all of the one where it's been ground zero in and where they didn't take care of the nursing homes. They ignored the nursing homes per se, mostly, as Janice Hahn, the latest one, said, a Farrar and her crew out there going all this stuff. They ignored that, but we've locked down the schools where there hasn't even been any threat to this. And now we're going to totally now we're going to make total social monks, which is a justification for public schools and a lot of that. Oh well, kids will have stunted social development and all that if they don't do that. Now you're going to bring them into school and you're going to make them stand, 87 miles apart from each other. Tell me I'm going crazy or something.
No, you're right. It's so unnecessary. But at least they're planning to reopen the schools. This is an improvement because once they go down the path of reopening the schools, they can get more information and hopefully be rational about what kind of precautions they're taking. But the thing that you put your finger on is that they failed to protect the vulnerable people. While they were making regulations for whether you could play volleyball, they were failing the people who were dying from COVID. And that is so inexcusable. It's so incompetent and very disturbing. It really shows that this was not something the government should have attempted. They should not have attempted a lockdown of the whole state of California or the whole country because there's no way back from that. How do you ever say, okay, now it's safe? You're always going to have a virus out there, if not this one, another one, and it's always going to be contagious, and there really isn't a way to protect everybody from everything. Your immune system protects you from almost everything, and the people who have weakened immune systems can be protected separate from what's necessary for everybody else, and that's where they failed. So now they're in the position of saying, well, how are we going to let the salons reopen, and how are we going to let the bars reopen, and how are we going to manage the schools? And now all of a sudden we're like in a Soviet central planning regime where they're trying to make rules for how far apart bar stools have to be. They don't know they can't do this. This is all just going to end up in reams of lawsuits where people are going to be running TV commercials on late night television saying, did you get COVID? Did you have a positive antibody test? You may be entitled to compensation. And they'll hold up one of these things that's been released by the governor's office saying, did your bar comply with all of these rules, every single one of them with their tape on the floor? This is just a nightmare. It should never have been attempted. And there is a way to fix it. What would fix it is a liability shield law that said to businesses, we are not going to assume that you're wrong. We're going to assume that you're right as long as you take reasonable precautions and take reasonable care and don't show intentional negligence. You can't be sued if someone comes into your business and later becomes sick with COVID-19. If they put a liability shield in place, then you wouldn't need quite so much of this regulatory rulemaking for everything. You could just calm things down a little bit and go back to where we were before, which was a rational way to manage public health.
This is, you might have known this, but this is something I just discovered today. Mark Galley, the mortician-looking guy that you see at the Gavin Newsom press conference and his head advisor on all this stuff, that he came out of L.A. County. But guess who? The top actual medical doctor who's right under Barbara Ferrer, the witchy, as I call her, looking woman that's the L.A. County health official, who is not a medical doctor, by the way. But who do they, he was in that, around that, who was the number one doctor at L.A. County, none other than I can't even say that, his wife. His wife is that. I mean, this would make the Ozark inbreeders green with envy of what's going on. And we figure out why the same policy, like you say, we segue, why they ignored the nursing homes. They get the same dingbats replacing the husband and wife of that, or replacing the advising now the governor, now back to L.A. County, and look where the problems are.
This is really troubling. And one of the things that's going on in L.A. County, and they probably are dragging the state along with them, is they're trying to implement progressive policies under the guise of the health emergency. For instance, this is their moment to solve the homelessness crisis. And as Sheila Kuehl, one of the L.A. County supervisors, actually said out loud, it's fortunate for us that this has happened because our businesses can't operate. Our businesses, let's look at that for a minute. They're not our businesses. They're their businesses. They belong to the people who own the businesses. Our businesses can't operate. Well, why can't they operate? Of course, she's talking about the hotels. They can't operate because of the lockdown order. So situation where the government has created a crisis for businesses and then coerced them into signing leases to become homeless shelters and coerced the cities into accepting it without any environmental impact report or public hearing or any feedback from city officials or local law enforcement. They just coerced them into it because, quote, it's an emergency. Well, an emergency is not permanent. So how do we get out of this? When the leases are up, how do we get out of this? And there's, of course, no way out of it. There's no way out of it.
Yeah, it's something that you couldn't have wrote this up in a worse Hollywood script of what's going on in here. But back to the education, why I started with that, and you had one of your great columns this week in the Press Enterprise and many other papers is who decides what's a worthwhile education. And this whole thing is, of that in the big fight, it was a very close race between Thurman and Torkelson. Torkelson was backed by the charter schools and the homeschoolers, and Thurman, who barely got in there, was backed by the teachers' unions and stuff. But amongst the column you wrote about the inside nuts and bolts and that, but it really looks like we're coming back to now we are moving the education model more to the model that was touted by the homeschoolers, by the charter schoolers, of home instruction or online instruction. We can do this a better way. We can use technology to do that. The teachers' unions, California Teachers Association, the school districts have been fighting this, kicking and screaming, but now reality's kicking them in the face on this stuff. But they're even trying, it seems like, to sue or trying, as they've done many, many times, to do that. What's the latest going on in this nuts and bolts war between trying to educate our kids in the best possible manner versus trying to make a lot of dollars out of this?
Well, of course, the teachers' union has been trying ever since Gavin Newsom was elected, and they've succeeded to some extent. They've tried to restrict the operations of charter schools. And one of the things they were awarded for their political support was a law that allows school districts to have a voice in whether new charters are approved in their area based on whether the new charter would have an impact economically on the school district. In other words, if it would take students away from the school district and they would have lower attendance and get less money, then the school district gets to veto whether there can be new charters. And that really is the opposite of what the original charter law was intended to create, which was a situation where parents were not happy with the district schools because they were underperforming, and then charter schools could be created as an alternative. And this flips it back and puts the district schools back in charge. So that's not a good situation. And anything that uses the coronavirus costs or emergency or situation, however you want to characterize it, as an excuse to shut down charter schools and put more money into district schools, I think that's unfortunate because parents need control over their kids' education. And where the schools are failing, parents should have the option to rescue their kids, because that's really what it is. You don't want to just saddle people with 5, 10, 15 years of substandard education because of the zip code or because of the teachers union or because someone doesn't want to fire an incompetent teacher, so you just allow people to essentially waste away in their classrooms and not learn anything. And that's just a tremendous lost opportunity for so many people, and particularly for low-income people who don't have enough options in their life anyway. And to take away options in public school is robbery. So I really hope that the charter schools are able to win some of the political battles and elect some of their chosen candidates to school boards around the state and balance this power that the teachers union has in Sacramento, because as we know, they're just about the most powerful lobby that exists in California. And they're doing it essentially with tax money. They're doing it because the teachers pay dues. You pay the teachers' salaries, and the teachers pay dues to the union, and the union pays donations to the campaigns of politicians who get elected and then negotiate the contracts with the teachers who paid them. And the whole thing is such an incestuous loop and it's all with your money. So it shouldn't be betraying your children with your money. It really needs to be straightened out. We need more school choice and more options for parents.
Yes, most of the studies I've seen that the ones who the groups that benefit most from charter schools or school choice are, which are not in California, but are the so-called, and I hate the term minorities of that, or Hispanics, blacks, and stuff like that. They benefit more for that. But back to that, I think it's the irony of this situation. You know, the California teachers' education system has fought charter schools and even homeschooling even harder. And now 100%, I think, of California public school system is now homeschooling.
Oh, because all the kids are out for the coronavirus emergency. They're all distance learning on their laptops, yeah. Well, I feel for all the parents who are homeschooling their children month after month. That's got to be pretty difficult with no warning and no option. That's pretty hard. You have to wonder, though, if you were creating a school district or a school system from scratch today, you wouldn't necessarily start with the system that we have, where you have small classes with teachers in each one. You could do more with video, and you could do more with one teacher teaching larger numbers of students with different kinds of recorded materials, and you could probably design something that worked differently, but we can't do that because there's inertia in all things, and we have what we have. This certainly has been an opportunity for everyone to try out new ideas, whether it's working at home or learning at home, and there will be some good things that come out of this as people sort of break out of their inertia and say, well, you know, we could really save a lot of money doing this, or this gives us more options, this gives us more range, more reach. All the time you're not spending driving between engagements, you can spend doing more engagements. So it's an opportunity all the way around for reform, but certainly kids have to go to school. Like, little kids in elementary school can't be all homeschooled. That's not really practical. Even in Sweden, where they didn't do a lockdown, they did close the higher grades, the older kids, but they did not close the elementary schools.
Yeah, junior highs and elementary schools stayed open. I know of one person who's probably for the last half a dozen years or so has went to school districts and county school boards and said, you know, you ought to look at, you can't use a 19th century school model in the 21st century. And that same person has said, you know, you ought to go to half school days, use virtual learning, online classes and stuff. You can do it more efficiently with technology and curve the education system to that. I mean, I'm kind of, I would have not rathered it not. We have had that argument or that discussion up until this point on that. If it took coronavirus to do that, maybe that can be one of the good things that come with that, and I hope they take your advice too of looking at that. This gives us the opportunity going forward to reshape and retool, reorganize, and make our public school systems, our whole school systems, our education systems, not only much better, but where it will work for the kids in the 21st century. So I hope that does happen, and if you got to look for the lights in the darkness of this, and I hope this is one of the things that comes out of this. But we got about a minute left, so I'm going to let you wrap it up.
Well, we're looking at an interesting November election coming up. It looks like there are going to be two huge property tax increases on the ballot. Vote no on both of them. One is going to be an attack on Prop 13 that takes away Prop 13 protection from all business properties, virtually all business properties except the very smallest ones. And that will mean higher prices. That will mean fewer jobs. What it would do is reassess property to market value instead of keeping it locked under Prop 13 where it can only go up 2% a year. So every business in California would see its costs just skyrocket, and that would be a catastrophe. So join the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association and help to fight against that and another one that affects inherited property and would bring that up to market value when it's transferred from one owner to the other between parents and children. So we don't want that either. So join the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association at and we will keep you informed and up to date on all of these things, because as we get close to the November election, or maybe it's all by mail and it's the October election, you're going to want all the information, and you're going to want to know how they're doing these things on the ballot when you don't have the usual campaign events in person and other types of things that we're used to. So join hjta.org and strengthen the voice of taxpayers in California.
Yes, you do. Join our Jarvis Taxpayers Association. It's only $15 a year. Best investment you'll ever make. We'll do it again next week. Susan, Shelley, thanks for being on.
Thanks, Roy. Take care.
One thing I want to get to the comments a little bit on the show, and Trump signed the executive order limiting Twitter and all that, or, that. I mean, I kind of have a little bit of a problem constitutionally with that, of doing that. But I have said, and I do think Facebook, Twitter, Google, it really needs to be the Sherman Antitrust Act that comes up with that on that to break up those companies. I think the one guy that did say that came up there and testified at Congress to the Senate and said, "You don't realize how they're really manipulating the system." But Carla writes in on that and says, "Americans need more help to get back to normal." I agree. And I don't even like the term normal. I just get back to the way it was before March, before all this madness started. We really don't need a lot of help. We need the chains of government that is constricting us pulled away from us. That's all we need. We were running at the top of the economy. Things were cooking, lowest unemployment rates almost across the board, clear across the board. There's no justification. It doesn't take a lot of stuff. Just take the chains off. There is no fear. 0.6% of our population's in nursing homes. Anywhere from 42 to 53% of the deaths in the United States are in the nursing homes. And we've locked down the whole country. We've shut down our schools where even in LA County, no one under the age of 18 has passed away from that. We have probably limited the herd immunity to that and everything else. So when we're going all this stuff, we really don't need, we don't need help per se, other than just, like I say, just releasing us from the constraints that we've been put in over the last 8-10 weeks on this stuff, unjustifiably. There's no, point me to the study, this data that says social distancing works, mask works. It's not out there because it doesn't. And it will not work in any of these cases. Hasn't worked, probably will not work in the future. Was absolutely wrong course. As Fauci said, we've probably done irreparable harm. And for that, I hope everyone takes that into account, as Susan Shelley said, when we're coming into these elections in October, November, and all that, because we don't want this to happen again. We'll be back tomorrow on Fast Friday with Stephanie on that, with the greatest show on earth. Until then, see ya!